Super stoked for today's episode. We're going to talk about one of my favorite pages of your website as an entrepreneur. That's right. I'm going to teach you my secret formula for an About Me page that converts. Welcome back to the Brandmerry channel, where we are dishing out branding and marketing tips to help you create more income and impact. I am Michelle Knight. I'm so excited that you are here. Before we dive into today's training, if you are not already subscribed to this channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and why not give this a like, all right? And at the very end, make sure you leave a comment and let me know your key takeaway from this video training. Truth be told, I have been talking about the power of an About Me page since 2016. The reason for that is I started to realize that my About Me page was getting a ton of traffic. Primarily, people who were visiting my website were also checking out my story page. Then, as I started to pay a little bit more attention, testing some different links and so on and so forth, I noticed that people were also opting in for my About Me page, meaning they were grabbing my freebie. So my About Me page was getting people to sign up for my email list. Then, when I knew I hit the sweet spot, I had multiple new clients tell me that it was my About Me page that had them decide to work with me over someone else. So since then, I have been raving about the power of an About Me page. And to be honest, your About Me page, not just in my case, but in general, is the second most read page on your website. The first one, of course, being your homepage, and I actually have an entire video that teaches you how to format your homepage. You can check that out right here, and we'll also link it below. Not only is your About Me page the second most visited page on your website, but it's where you get to really harness the power of storytelling. Something else I talk about a lot on this channel. Multiple videos for you on that. We're gonna go ahead and link a playlist below so you can dive into all of those. But a few key things about storytelling. Number one, it provides a more memorable experience for your audience. Studies show that storytelling can actually increase how memorable your content is by 22 times. So that means by adding story into your content, no matter where you're posting it, you're becoming more memorable. Now, we're talking about an entire page dedicated to storytelling. Just imagine what you can do. We also know that storytelling can increase the connection between a brand and a consumer. In fact, purchase decisions are made from the emotional side of our brain, not the logistics side. That's kind of where we justify it. The emotional side is where most of our purchase decisions are being made. So storytelling is a great way to build that connection with a consumer. And truth be told, there are multiple brands, multiple businesses doing the exact same thing as you. And I'm sorry if that makes me sound like a Debbie Downer, but it's actually an opportunity for you to stand out and connect with your ideal customer on a deeper level. So if someone is exploring their options of a particular product to buy, a service to buy, and seeing what kind of brand speaks to them, your About Me page is where you can ultimately seal the deal. And I have used this exact strategy to sign numerous clients in my business, sometimes without a single form of communication before the purchase, and them telling me after the fact that they decided because of my story. So what do we do with this information? We create an About Me page that is rockin' and rollin' and touches on some key points. Now, I'm gonna share with you my signature way to structure an About Me page. This works really well for coaches and consultants, anyone in the service-based industry, but I have had my product-based businesses follow a very similar structure as well. Essentially, the idea is to share your brand story broken up into 3 transitions. Now, 3 is just a magic number that I have chosen. If you have 4 or 5, that's okay too, but I recommend that you do your very best to point out 3 specific points of your story. So how do you do this? you want to think about 3 specific transitions or turning points in your story. Now, because you're a service-based business owner, you're creating more of a personal brand, meaning that your story is most likely the reason why you are choosing to run the business that you have today. So the first thing that I want you to do is free write. Don't think specifically about your service that you're offering. Don't even think specifically about your brand messaging if you've figured that out. Just free write and think about your life story and the different moments where you were presented with an opportunity to change direction, whether it was a good opportunity or a not so great opportunity. But you yourself looked at that situation and said, look, I'm going to choose something different. That's what I mean by a transition. So let me give you an example of my 3 transitions that I use on my About Me page, which you can always check out on my website, brandmerry.com. The first transition is when I decided not to go to a university and instead moved to California to pursue my passion of theater. I was only 17 at the time. I had basically a full ride scholarship to school, and I graduated near the top of my class. So this was kind of like a big deal that I decided not to do that. The second transition in my life is the unfortunate passing of my brother to cancer. My brother passed away in 2009, and as you can imagine, that was a pivotal moment in my story and a huge transition because what I chose to do next really impacted the rest of my life. And the third transition, and ultimately the start of my business, was the birth of my son in 2005. Now, obviously, a lot has happened in between those 3 transitions. I mean, we're going back to 2005, we've got 2009, and then 2015 as it relates to my story. I'm not focused on all the nitty-gritty little details in between. Those are great micro stories that we could share on social media, but for our purposes, I'm focused on these 3 main transitions. Now, when you think of your 3 transitions, the next step I want you to do is identify how you grew from each of those or how you were changed. Not so much what happened, but what did you do in that situation? So in my case, the very first one, I made a decision to go against what was expected of me and move to California. In the second transition, I was met with an incredible loss and incredible grief. And in that moment, I decided to start living my life more in alignment with who I wanted to be than who others were expecting me to be. I realized in that moment that I didn't have a lot of time. That time was very limited, and I was going to use it to its greatest potential. And my third transition, the birth of my son and going through my postpartum experience, just further gave me the drive that I needed to create the beautiful life that I now have today. Ultimately, creating my business, Brandmerry. So now that you've identified the 3 transitions and you have identified what has happened in each of those 3 transitions, now I want you to look for the connector. How are these pieces connected? What does this tell you about the work that you're doing? Does this relate to your mission? Is this closely related to your ideal customer? What is coming up for you around these connectors? For me, it was all about this life of freedom, something I talk about a lot. Having the time, financial, and location freedom, and building something that was really in alignment with who I was at my core and not what was expected of me by other people. This ultimately led to all of the messaging that you see today with Brandmerry and is the core staple of my brand story. So when you're structuring your About Me page, you literally now get to plug and play. You'll start at the beginning with leading into the first transition, sharing what happened, what you learned, and then going into the second transition, sharing what happened and what you learned, going into the third transition, sharing what happened, sharing what you learned, ultimately leading to where you are today. Now, today is your business. And so when you're positioning this part of the About Me page, you've been telling an amazing story. Your ideal customer is getting to know you. They're getting to know your values. They're getting to know what's happened in your past. They're starting to build that connection with you, ultimately understanding why you have the business that you have today. Now, at the bottom of the page, we're giving them the opportunity to continue, to now say, I want that, or I want your support. And we're positioning our offer at the very end. Ultimately, you're taking your reader on a journey. You're inviting them into your story, which in turn makes them look at their story and what they ultimately want to create. A few key things I want you to keep in mind. Number one, this is an evolution. Just like any great story, you're going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. But in our case, our end isn't permanent. It's always changing. It's always growing because our business is always changing, is always growing. So rather than ending the story and putting a period on it, you're instead offering your audience an invitation to come and invite them into your story, invite them into your work. So again, rather than thinking beginning, middle, and end, this is the very end of the story, close the book, and bye-bye, it's beginning, middle, and an invitation to move forward. This is incredibly helpful because I find that a lot of people, when doing their story page or their About Me page, actually miss the opportunity to invite their audience to take the next step. Instead, they're just telling their story and not focusing on who is actually receiving that information. Which brings me to a very important part. Yes, you're going to be sharing your story. And yes, I stand on the side that says your About Me page should be about you, the brand. I'm sorry, but if I see something that says about me and I'm literally going to that page to learn more about that person and they're not telling me anything, I'm gonna peace out. And it has been About Me pages and my story pages that have gotten me to take action on specific brands. I shop around. I love research. And if I can't decide between 3 different brands who have a very similar product, I will always go to the story page so I can learn more about the mission, about the values, and about the story behind that business. And whichever one registers best with me is the brand that I go with. And studies show that this is true for consumers. And one of the ways that you can invite your audience into your story, a little secret for you, is to ask questions throughout your About Me page. So as I mentioned, you can go read my full About Me page over at brandmerry.com, but an example of this might be when I share the story of my son being born and me ultimately deciding to start my business, I ask questions like, have you had a moment where you realized that you wanted something greater? Do you remember that moment when you decided you wanted to start your business? I'm telling my story, but I'm constantly checking in with my ideal customer to let them know that I get them. I also know where they're coming from, and I'm giving them these questions so that rather than just reading about me, they're also reflecting about themselves. At the end of the day, an About Me page and storytelling in general is incredibly powerful because it allows you to create and provide empathy and authority. You're able to connect with your ideal customer as well as position yourself as the solution to the problem. This is incredibly powerful and why storytelling is one of my favorite things to teach at Brandmerry. So there you have it. There is the signature structure for an About Me page, something I have been teaching for years, and I have literally only updated my About Me page one time in my entire business. And I haven't even changed the 3 transitions. I think I just went in and added some photos here and there and updated the layout. The story has remained the same. And time again, we see that my About page is leading to email subscribers and sales. And I know that it can do the same for you. So I can't wait to see what you create with your An About Me page. Leave me a comment below if you had an aha moment and if you are ready and determined to continue to get your brand seen and paid using the power of marketing, branding, storytelling. I have a free class just for you. You can head to brandmerry.com/class where I am teaching you my signature framework on getting your brand seen and paid consistently. Head to brandmerry.com/class and I will see you next week with a new episode.